Good night. So I would like to record a small video on the subject of ego. Probably not a very popular subject, and it will be a little preachy, but I guess not everybody likes it, but part of the job is to preach, so hence I will preach. Of course, almost needless to say, from my perspective, the subject of ego and the war that is around us in Israel is one and the same. It's one and the same. Like, I don't know if you see it, but for me, this is completely, it's the same thing. Again, you need to remember, a huge amount of, as every if it's not obvious, I will state, even though I spoke about it in the past, and people that have, that understand, that know the Middle East, it's kind of like, it might be obvious, but not everybody, understand the Middle East, so I will just, say a few words. In Israel, in the state of Israel, it was always like that, since the inception of the state, and arguably even before, but since then and until now, it was always like that, that the entire security, the entire defense paradigm is based on taking the initiative. It was always like that. And this is true whenever, for all kinds of enemies or perceived enemies, whether it's arch enemies, Nasser in his time during the 60s, that presumably had kind of ambitious to unite the entire Arab world against to the pan-Arab vision against Israel and for other purposes. And it's true if distant enemies Iraq in the 1980s or presumably Iran today, and it's also true against the Palestinians, which are of course repressed population that is under the boot of the Shabak all the time. But whatever the enemy is it was always, or of course let's not forget Egypt, that was a major enemy for many years. The most I mentioned Nasser, but yes, just to say so it was always the main paradigm of Israel that they must have the initiative. This is presumably because of the fact that they cannot defend themselves almost at all. Israel is, there is no such, the military forces of Israel is famously called the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, but that's the one thing that they absolutely cannot do. And presumably they cannot even theoretically do it. And this was understood by the first people that, the first Zionists. It's not a new issue. It was always like that they cannot defend themselves because of all sorts of geographic, because of the geography of the place. This place is tiny. I don't know if you understand it. I know that people listen to me all around the world. Some people don't understand how small this place is. It's it's a tiny place. It's nothing. It's just a tiny place with crazy people that fighting each other. It's a tiny place. So they cannot really defend themselves, and it was always like that. So that's why, and they have many enemies, and they always had many enemies, and they like it. They don't like peace. Forget about everything. They say that they want peace. ידנו מושטת לשלום. רבים חוכייך גם ברכי, וידידיי, וכל חי חי חי, חי חי חי. It was always a joke. It was always a joke. They don't like peace. They like war, and their culture is predicated on never-ending war. This is Israel. It was always like that. Not to say that the adjacent Arab nations are all righteousness among the nations. They are not. They were not. And they also like wars, and they warred a lot between each other as well. Just to say, some people forget it, but I mean, throughout the 20th century, the second half of the 20th century, the Arab nations also fought a lot between themselves, not only with Israel. Like, it's easy to forget it, but I mean, actually, Israel was only one front. Like, I mean, they also like to fight between each other. So, but I mean, Israelis like to fight. They like war. They like to be warmongering nations. It's in their blood. But they cannot defend themselves, and it was always like that. That's why all the tenets, all the major tenets of the Israeli security were predicated on the fact that they must take the initiative, and defense is not an option. They cannot defend themselves. There was one glaring exception to that, which is what we called the War of Attrition, מלחמת ההתשה, which happened between the 67 war and the 73 war, and it was in the South Front, and it was actually a very difficult war, even though probably this war will have much more casualties, like what's going on right now. But it was a long war, and Israelis do not know how to fight long wars. It's not part of the system, and and part of it actually was defense, and they don't know how to do it, and it was a very difficult war, and it was still remembered by, I mean, it's still very harsh memory in the minds of people that actually were alive during the time, because even though, I mean, this conflict, as I say, probably have much more casualties, but I mean, the problem is that it was a defense war, and it's something that, I mean, and you know, by its name, attrition, war of attrition. From the Israeli perspective, it was like, I mean, it was like a never-ending nightmare, because they don't know how to do it, and they didn't know back then. And it involved around defense, like of the Southern Front, and they against Egyptians, and it was very hard for them. But this is kind of like, I mean, an exception. Usually, it's all about initiative, being the first to strike. It was always like that, always, 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 always. And it doesn't matter what the nature of the enemy. That's why two things that were always very important for them is, first, to have three things that were always very important. Is, first, the ability to use reserve forces, must be called miluim, very quickly, extremely quickly. Now, this is actually something that a little bit decreased in the last 2 decades. So this is a tenet of Israeli security that is actually being a little bit like diminished in the last 20 years, but it's still very important. And it's also very important in this conflict, and it's part of Israeli society. And it was always like that, I mean, they depend on their ability, like, to very quickly, I mean, tell, like, I mean, high percentage of the population, go to your units, you will know the drill, like, without much, like, fuss, like, I mean, in a matter of hours, and like in a matter of hours, to be able to tell, I mean, the huge part of the population, you know the drill, to go now, and they will know pretty much where, I mean, there are always, like, you know, famously, there is always, like, blunders. There are always blunders. It's never really, like, clean, but I mean, it is the idea that, I mean, large part of the population, I mean, know all the time that, I mean, in a matter of hours, they know where to go. I mean, they don't even ask questions. Like, I mean, they know, like, I mean, some don't even do it without any speech, like, at all. Like, they just don't know. They know exactly what, I mean, civilians, like, just, I mean, you know, people between the ages of 21 and 40, that, I mean, they just know where to go. Like, when Madeline calls, and she doesn't even need to call. Like, I mean, they know that to go to a place where they will, you know, Yamachin, like a storage, where they get, like, take, you know, take weapon, take, I mean, you know, and like, you know, uniform. Even though many times they have the uniform already in their closet in their home. Civilians, regular civilians, but they know how to do it because it's part of their culture. So, I mean, and they know, like, how to report to their units, like, even without speech, like, they don't even need to tell them. So this is why, I mean, logistical processes that in many other places takes months, in Israel, it presumably, I mean, according to a deal, should take hours. But this actually is a little bit diminished in the last 20 years, but it's still important. This is one tenet. A second tenet is the supremacy of the Israeli Air Force, which is something that I spoke about a lot in this channel, mostly in the derogative way, because I don't want to repeat myself. But these are, I mean, the famous Israeli Air Force, I mean, they are Nazis. Like, they are a bunch of Nazis, all of them. If I could like press like one button to kill all the pilots like in Israel, I will do it. I mean, without hesitation. They are Nazis. They are just a bunch of Nazis. Yes, I mean, maybe, I don't know, during the 60s, they were famously, I mean, involved in all sorts of like dogfights that were important for the Americans in order to test all sorts of, 70s, for I don't know what, to see if like, the MiG-20 fucking something is has this abilities or another, so it's important like to participate against it in all sorts of dogfights. This belongs to the ancient past. In the last many decades, they are a bunch of Nazis. But yes, it's important, I mean, it's part of the Israeli security, I mean, defense, like, strategy, that to have like these Nazis that are always trained to be able to, I mean, to bomb hospitals and to terrorize the civilians and to do any kind of war crime that you can think of. And it was always like that. But it's much more than ever in nowadays. And the third tenet is intelligence. They must, and this is of course very important because of the need for initiative. They must know exactly what's going on to be able to strike first. To be able to be those that set, I mean, the pace. So intelligence is incredibly important, and in Israel, the military intelligence is unusually dominant relative to other nations. Of course, they have the Shabak and the Mossad, and I speak about these pedophile goons a lot in this channel, because they hunt me all my life. But there is also, I mean, actually the intelligence, the military intelligence, that I almost never speak about it, partly because I served in it, and I don't want like the cops to come to my door and say that I don't know, tell me like military secrets in YouTube, and they cannot say that I do it like, I mean, of Shabak and the Mossad, because I'm not related to them at all. So, I mean, besides the fact that everybody that I know are part of them and they hunt me all my life, besides this tiny fact, which is presumably a state secret, but I shouldn't know it, I mean, I presume I'm not related to them, so I can say whatever I want about the Shabak and the Mossad, which is not exactly the truth about military intelligence. And I served there like for almost 6 years. So, but it is famously known that they are in Israel, they are very dominant. Relative to other nations, where military intelligence is not, it's not incredibly, I mean, it's important, but it's not very important from the point of view of of the rulers, of the heads of the state. In other nations, it's usually that they mostly, for strategic issues, they rely more on civilian intelligence agencies. Famously, the NSA, famously, but there are many of those. I don't even remember the names, but there are many of those. But in Israel, military intelligence is huge. Like, it's huge. And just to say that in Israel, to give you an average unit in the Israeli military intelligence is bigger than the Navy, the Israeli Navy. Just to say, think about it. Think about it in your own countries. Compare just a unit in military intelligence, not even the whole intelligence. That's military intelligence bigger than the Navy of your country. But that's the way it is. All of that in order to be able to always have the initiative. Now, why do I say all that? This conflict was started by a huge blunder where the Palestinians had the initiative in a very atypical way. And they used it to cause tremendous damage to Israel, unheard of, historical damage. And the people that need to prevent this from happening are exactly the same people that are featured in this channel. Exactly the same people throughout the last year and before that in other social media. They are the subject of this channel. Besides the Neros, like the robots, they are the second type of robots that are the topic of this channel. These are the same people. And you need to understand, these people, spent an unimaginable amount of resources on hunting me until the recent couple of days. And as I said in previous video from the last couple of days, to prove that I'm homosexual using any possible way. And for that, both the Shabak and the Mossad, I mean, they dedicated tremendous assets and resources. These are exactly the same people that were supposed to prevent just what happened a couple of days ago that caused, I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands of civilians and soldiers dying. It's the same people. So the issue of ego and the issue of war, from my perspective, it's the same issue. It's just the same issue. They want wars. They like wars very much. Because after the war ends, those who survive are elevated tremendously in status. Whatever the result of this war will be, I guarantee you the Shabak and the Mossad, mostly the Shabak, is the bigger between the two. And as I said in the past, the differences between them are actually much smaller than you might imagine. And they're actually competitors. But this is not unique to Israel. This is actually, it happens a lot in other countries as well. But I spoke about it in the other videos. This is actually how intelligence works in many countries. I mean, both democratic and non-democratic. That the intelligence agencies are competing between each other. But in Israel, there is another kind of quirk here, that the Mossad is not exactly controlled by the Israelis, but it's kind of like a shared control by both Americans and the Israelis. This is partly because, partly as consequences of the great Titan scandals of the 1970s and early 1980s. Partly because of that, the Americans decided that the Mossad is a beast that must be slain, and they slaughtered the beast. And from then, the Israeli politicians have only limited control of the Mossad, and the Americans share control with them. And the American president can actually give orders to the Mossad. And this is partly because of historical scandal revolving the Titans, revolving the foreigners or alien or robots, whatever you want to call it. Because the Americans, I mean, they had enough of these cruel children, the Israeli cruel children, and they decided that as a punishment they cannot because the Mossad was too strong, and they had, to say that they were unethical is understatement. They had no limits at all. Everybody were and still are creeps in the intelligence services of this world, but there were nobody that was so evil as the Mossad. Nobody. The KGB, the CIA, they didn't reach the heights of evil and cruelty of the Mossad. And the Americans decided that they had enough of this shit, and they cut their head. And since then, they control. It's like almost 40 years that the Mossad is not in complete control of the Israelis. But the Shabak is, of course, is the bigger, by far the bigger of the two. And famously, as you see, it's mainly, the quality of the people is, this is like pedophile children, pirates, all sort of goons, homosexual perverts. You know who are they? This is the scum of the earth. But there are many. And one thing is certain, that after the end of this conflict, it is guaranteed. I don't know how it will end, but one thing is guaranteed: the Shabak will get more money. 100% certainty, they will get more money, and they know it very well. And if you think that they are not cynical enough to take this into their consideration when they decide how to act, you don't know the people. There is nothing that is too cynical for them. Nothing. You cannot even imagine something that will be too cynical for these people. So yes, the issue of ego and the issue of war is one and the same from my perspective. It's the same issue. Now you want to understand what is ego? I'll tell you what is ego. I remember that, I mean, a couple of months ago, I was still under arrest in my mother's apartment, but I had, like, I mean, by order or by law, 4 hours that I can, like, walk outside. First with my mother, and after a month, like, even alone. And during this time, like, I walked in the street of Rishon LeZion, I remember that I had kind of like a prophecy or divination, a prophecy. I don't remember if I recorded it, most certainly I did, because I spoke about it, like, I mean, but I don't know if I uploaded to YouTube, but I think probably I did, but I don't really remember. But what I've said is the following. I've said, these people, that the Israeli people, as long as they breathe, they will spit in my face. And if, like, all of them die, and only one is left alive, but he's, like, terminally ill, and, like, he's, like, crawling on the ground, in his last energies, he will spit on my face. I remember I compared it to the first Terminator movie. If you remember the end, almost the last scene, like the robot is crushed by a truck, if I remember correctly, and it's kind of like, I mean, he's like the T whatever T8, I don't know, like, you know, the robot. So it's kind of like the evil robot is evil, like in this movie, the first one. So it's kind of like he's crawling on the ground, like, I mean, he's totally deformed, like he's nothing, you know, and he's not like, you know, he's kind of like, he cannot even move, but, you know, he still has got, like, you know, the red spark in his eyes, and he still tries to, like, I mean, crawl, and in his last kind of bit of energy, he's trying, like, you know, to model, like, you know, the Sarah Connor or whatever. And that's, I mean, how I imagine the last Israeli. While he's crawling on the ground, he will spit on my face. And why did I recall this divination of prophecy? Because you can actually see it right now. In this apartment, like, in real life. Like, whenever I go outside now in the last couple of days, or now just, I mean, to prepare, I don't know, something to eat in the kitchen. So the people, I mean, they're still here, but you cannot even, they don't go out almost at all, and they don't even see my face. They mostly are just, I mean, they are on their beds, I mean, because they are all terminally ill, and, you know, just like in a deathbed. I don't even see them. They are very ill, and, you know, just, I mean, barely can they're able to do anything at all. They don't eat anything for a long time. I'm the only one that uses the kitchen. So when I go to the kitchen, like, to eat something, prepare something to eat, you can hear, like, I mean, and the kitchen, and near the kitchen, there are, like, it's like relatively, like, big apartment, like, with, I don't know, 6, 7 rooms, like, I mean, because it's like a hostel for homeless people. So, but they're all Shabakniks, of course, like, it's an intelligence cell. So there are people, like, I mean, in the rooms, like, in the 2 rooms that are adjacent to the kitchen. So when I go to eat, like, to prepare the food, or take start to prepare food, or, I mean, so they know it, and in their last energies, you can hear them from their bed doing things like and all sorts of, like, bodily, like, I mean, noises. I mean, so I'll be, like, disgusted by the food that I prepare to myself. And these people, I mean, they are terminally ill, and I don't even know their names. I don't know. To say that I've never done anything to them wrong, I don't even know them. But of course, they know me. And what do they know about me? That they have taken for me my health all my life. They only took things from me all my life. They never gave anything in return. And they hate me so much that in literally their deathbed, they cannot even get out of the bed. They cannot even show them their faces. But from their deathbed, they use their last energy to disgust me from the food that I eat, like when I go to the kitchen to grab something to eat. This is Israel, and this is ego. This is Satan. This is Satan. This is Satan. Maybe you don't like to hear about Satan because you identify it with Christianity, and maybe you have an aversion to Christianity. And I must say that I can understand it. Not that I never even had any problem with Christianity. Like, even when I was, like, you know, Orthodox Jew, and after that when I was kind of, like, I mean, culturally Jew, I never had any problem with any religion. It wasn't my cup of tea, like, since I was born, because it doesn't feel like, I mean, my family that, I mean, are very, we are very intellectual, like, I mean, so we don't, like, I mean, they mostly, I mean, they don't prone to, like, hate, like, you know, like other religions, things like that. I mean, it's like, I mean, for them, I mean, you know, everything is, like, worth studying, but, you know. But, I mean, yeah, I mean, I do understand. I mean, speaking about Satan, wasn't something that is part of my discourse throughout my life, because it's not a Christian, a Jewish thing, it's a Christian thing. Even though, of course, Satan, the concept of Satan is, of course, rooted in Judaism, in the Old Testament, but even more so like in Jewish thought. But it's a very minor issue in Judaism, and it was borrowed by the Christians from Judaism, but it was elevated to a much higher status. And it's raised to, like, the concept of Satan is much more prominent in Christian thought than in Judaism. Jews don't think about it too much or at all, and when Jews hear about Satan, I mean, it reminds them of Christian discourse, and they kind of like feel that it's not, I mean, they feel aversion to it, or just, I mean, they don't understand it, or even just, I mean, even maybe even like repulsed by it. So I can understand it, but during the last 4.5 years, it's not only that I changed my heart, like, I mean, and I understood Christianity, and I now, I mean, for several years that I identify myself as Yehudi Mishichi, which is like a Protestant Christian, but more than that, like, I mean, I understood what is Satan. Not by reading philosophy books, even though I really like reading philosophy books, but by just looking up, just, I mean, watch what people watching, just people watching, and you understand that yes, I mean, Christianity was right to elevate the issue of Satan, like the concept of Satan from obscurity in Jewish thought to a prominent, like, status, because this is real. This is real. Satan is real. It's a power that exists in this world that takes control over people. Of course, only if they want to. Like, you need to give, like, to open the door for Satan, but then he enters the house and he's like the king of the house. And you see it all around you in Israel. These people are consumed by Satan. They are consumed by Satan. They don't know me personally. I've never done anything wrong with them. They only took things from me without my knowledge all my life. They never give anything in return. And they hate me to such a point that, I mean, while they're sleeping in their deathbed, not sleep, I mean, lay there, I mean, they are consumed with hate. So if I go to the kitchen to eat something, and it's not that I'm like rich, you know, they don't need to envy me for like being rich or powerful. I'm in a worse situation than them, because I cannot even leave the house. I have almost no food. I depend on charity. But I mean, it's too much for them, so that I'm going to eat like whatever very modest meal like that I eat. Very modest meal. It's too much. They need in the last effort. I mean, of course, it's not the only thing that they've done. And it's documented and even videoed in this channel. Like I was subjected to a lot of violence in this apartment. I had to call the police several times, and I mean, people hit me, people broke the door, yelled at me, threatened my life many times. But even like when they don't have any energy to do it because they are so sick that they cannot even show their face, in their last energy, like their last breath, they, I mean, so I will not be able to actually, presumably, eat, I mean, so I will be disgusted by the meal that I eat, very modest one. This is Satan. This is Satan. This is Satan, and is all over the place in Israel. And if you don't like to speak about it because it reminds you of Christian theology, then, I mean, I'm sorry for you, but this is real. This is real. This is, for me, it's real as anything else. It's real like the robots that I see under the microscope, and it's real like, I mean, like, you know, like I mean, every like the Full Metal Jacket, I mean, you know, the insect that, I mean, that I saw in my own eyes, like, and done autopsy to it. I mean, you can say that, I mean, this is like a fake autopsy, and that this is a fake insect, and the neurons are all, the robots are all 3D, I mean, product of like 3D studio animation. But I mean, this is like closing your eyes to reality, because it's not. They are all real, and Satan is also real, and he's all over the place in Israel. This is a state consumed by Satan, consumed by it completely, chewed by Satan. Like, you know, in the last, famously in the last part of the Inferno of Dante, like that Lucifer is chewing in the deepest place of hell. There is chewing like in his jaws, the most horrible, like, I mean, like, you know, criminals, like the most horrible, like in historical figures. That's Israel. There is a Lucifer, a satanic creature that is chewing the people in his jaws, and because they wanted it like that, that's what they want. That's what they want. I would say another thing. One of the problems right now is that, of course, the demise of the hybrids, what I call the hybrids, the people that ate the tea, of course, affected the war tremendously. And this also, of course, relates to how much energy they allocated in, hunting me. Because if they weren't prosecuting me to that extent, I wouldn't even know about their existence. But that's their priorities. But another thing should be said. What you see now in the streets, and I go a little bit to buy food in the groceries, and now today to go to the bank for the national security money. What you see in the streets is actually interesting, because you would have thought that after the whole the suffering and the hits they received in the last couple of days, they will be their ego will be lower, and in the first days it was demonstrated because they were shocked. But what you see now is typical to relatively relatively early stage of the blunder or the understanding of the military blunder, but not but after the shock. And what you see actually now is an elevated spirit. You see them you see the hybrid monsters, the eaters of the tea, with elevated spirit, with much more energy and motivation to hurt me, and to do the bicycle thing and to take my health for me. And why is it like that? You need to understand something. Many times during military conflict, during the initial stages, even if they were related to blunders, and many times it's like that. They not only in the Middle East but everywhere. That conflicts start with kind of Pearl Harbor or something. It's all almost because one side they have the initiative, and it's used that in modern wars, in modern conflicts. But it wasn't always like that. But it's like that in modern conflicts that that are based on initiative. So it's usually start with kind of a blunder. But even even if you are on the side that received the hit, many people that are and it's really common among people that are warmongering by their nature, and also they have material interest in the world, as I said now, that they feel elevated because they feel that yes, this kind of this creature, this robot, yes, he had is kind of he had an opportunity to crush the hybrids, and some were dead or injured tremendously and kept out of the game, but we survived. So this means that if we survived, we are more powerful than him, and now it's time to crush him, to hit him back. And you see it on their faces, in the street, this thought that they are happy, that some of their friends are dead, that it actually makes their spirit elevated. And this is something that you see among Spartan people, that there is happiness. It's not that they want to see their friends die, but after they die, certainly in what is considered a combat situation, it makes their spirit elevated, because they feel yes, we survived, so we are gods. We survived. Now it's time to hit back, because he has no more energy. Yes, he had a little bit of energy. He used it. The enemy used it to hit us. But but we survived while other died. So it means that he has no more energy. He cannot do anything more. He's done now, and now we will hit him back, and we will take vengeance. And after the war, we will be even more higher status and more money from everybody. Yes, and you can see it on their faces in the streets. You can see it on their faces. This is reality. This is reality. This is the state of Israel. This is reality.